Sri Matre Namaha. So let's meditate on verse 51.
Duṣṭadūrā Durācāraśamanī Doshavarjitā Sarvajñā Sāndrakaruṇā Samānādhikavarjitā.
So let's start with the first word, Duṣṭadūrā. Duṣṭa means corrupted, spoiled, disturbed, wicked. Dura means distant. Okay. Duṣṭadūrā means she who is far from the evil. She who keeps evil at a distance. Now the word dushta comes from the same root. Dush. Dush means spoil or bad, become tainted. Okay, dushta is not describing a type of a person, it's actually a condition. Like say for example milk. Milk is not born spoiled, but it becomes spoiled. You get what I'm saying? So something happened to it. Something entered it. So this name is not pointing finger at anybody and saying, okay, bad people, bad person. It's pointing at what happens to a heart when, greed, hatred, cruelty, arrogance, and all those negative emotions when it enters somebody's mind. Okay, so that is dusht here. Duṣṭadūrā, she's far from that. Just again look at the word nama, not far from you, far from that, far from dushta. Now this is where it's really get interesting because this name has a problem. The problem is, if you look at Sahasranamam, it is said Devi is there everywhere. Okay, Devi is inside us, inside everybody. She is in every atom, she is in every heartbeat, in every breath. So tell me one thing, how can she be inside, when she is inside everybody, how can she be far from these evil people? Okay, this is a logical question, right? So, but that's where it gets interesting. It says she's far, doesn't say that she's not there. Okay? So distance here is not a distance of space. It's not about that physical distance. So we're talking about mental distance. So here Dura is not physical distance, it is mental distance. So she has not moved. And she cannot move. She is there everywhere. She is inside everybody. She is even inside that evil person. But there is a distance. And this distance is created entirely from our side. Now this is a very powerful concept. Okay, just get it right. Okay, she's sitting inside everybody, in the heart of, even inside the cruelest man you can imagine, right? She's not very far physically from that person. Okay? But for that person, for that cruel person, Devi is very far. She is on the other side of the universe. Like imagine you are in the daylight and if you close your eyes, what happens? There's no light. There's no light, right? If you close your eyes right now, there is no light. There is darkness. You can't see anything. But the sun has not gone anywhere. The sun is here. But I closed my eyes and I created darkness. So all these dushta people, they may say that, they may swear there is no light. And they are not lying. They are sharing their experience. Because they shut the door, they close their eyes. I'll give one more example. This is a very important concept and I want you to understand. Imagine there are a lot of radio waves here, right? Right now in your room, wherever you're sitting, electromagnetic waves, a lot of waves here. We'll take radio waves, okay? Radio waves is something which is there everywhere, FM, whatever you want to call. So they are broadcasting something. There is music, there is voice, all of those things are passing through you every moment, but you can't hear anything. To hear, you have to switch on your radio. Not just switching on the radio, you have to tune to that signal. And if you don't tune it correctly, you will hear that noise, static it's called, that sound. So the broadcast is there. The signal is there. It didn't go anywhere. But we are not tuned to it. Or the receiver could not receive it. That's the distance we're talking about. Spiritual distance. So her grace, Devi's grace is that broadcast. It never stops. It never reduces. And it has no favorites like sunlight. but our inner state is the receiver. So when your mind is full of all these negative emotions, resentment, jealousy, comparison, anger, you want to see others fail and all those things, that is static. You're tuned to noise. And then you complain there is no music. Okay? So this is where the name becomes uncomfortable, because Sahasranamam says that you can be, for example, you are inside a temple, you are standing inside a temple and you're praying, you're chanting 1,000 names every day. And you can do a lot of things, sadhanas and things like that. But if your mind is not clear, mind is not pure, and if you are cutting people down with your words, and if you have all those negative emotions, whether you have a beautiful puja room or you go to temple every day, doesn't matter. If your heart is full of hatred, hatred for other people, whatever spiritual activities you do, it's of no use, because Devi will not come close to you. She will be very far from you. Okay, so that is Duṣṭadūrā. In psychology, there is this concept. They talk about emotions and perceptions. Okay, it's very interesting. It's very well connected to this particular nama. Like it says, like all our negative emotions, say like fear or resentment, anger especially, when you experience those emotions, your mind will become narrow. It is said our field of attention, like we have like a tunnel, it becomes very narrow. So when you are overwhelmed with this negative emotions, we don't see things clearly. We don't notice things. We see less, we take less from the world. On the other hand, positive emotions like gratitude, love, calmness, all those things will broaden your mind and also broaden your perception. So we literally see more. We expand our mind. In psychology, this is called the broaden and build effect. So that's exactly what Lalitha Sahasranamam is saying here. Thousands of years back, they spoke about the same thing. When you're soaked in negativity, you cannot perceive things. No, actually it says you cannot perceive her. You cannot perceive Devi. Because Devi is that divinity within you, right? So they were describing how our mind actually works. Negativity is not just making you unhappy, it will also make us blind, negative emotions. So that is the beauty of Lalitha Sahasranamam. It is saying that our mind, when it is like filled with negativity, you don't experience Devi. So I'll tell you one more very short story, and then we'll move to the next nama. This is a story from Mahabharata. Similar, there are a lot of stories of similar line, but this Mahabharata story is actually, I think it's the origin. So it goes like this. So Krishna once called Yudhishthira, and he said, go out into the kingdom and search everywhere and bring me one truly bad person. Okay? So Yudhishthira walked, for days, villages, markets, streets, everywhere, even prisons, it seems he went, and he looked into faces of people, he listened to conversation, and then he came back to Krishna and said, Krishna, I could not find even a single person. Everyone I met had something good in them. May not be like completely good, but there is something good in them. I cannot find somebody who's really, really bad. Okay. Now some people are suffering, some people are confused, some people made mistakes, all those things are fine, but they're not truly bad. I could not find a single one. Then Krishna will call or Duryodhana. Okay, he said same thing. Duryodhana, go into the kingdom and bring me one truly good person. Okay, Duryodhana walked into the same street, same village, same market, same faces, and he came back empty-handed again. And he said, there is not even a single good person. Everybody has some selfishness hiding somewhere. Everyone wants something. I could not find a single good person. Same kingdom, same people, same street, but two different worlds. Because what you find outside is decided by what you are carrying inside. I repeat, your inner world creates your outer world. So Duryodhana was not lying. He genuinely, he could not see goodness. The same way, Devi is not very far. She is there. But when you are corrupted, wicked, whatever, you will feel that she is very far. So that is Duṣṭadūrā. Dura means again harmful, wrong. Āchāra is conduct or behavior or repeated way of doing something. Shamini means calm, she who calms, pacifies, cools. So she who brings wrongful conduct to an end, that is Durācāraśamanī. Āchāra is a very powerful word. In our Dharma Shastra, Āchāra is one of the pillars of Dharma. It doesn't mean that just one action. It means a set of habits, custom habits. That is Āchāra. So Durācāra is not just one date. We're talking about that pattern that has hardened. Now, if you look at all our emotions, like say for example anger, it is not just one anchor problem. It is an anchor architecture. It is built over years, maybe like 20 years, brick by brick. Your reactions are like that. Not just one day, it is actually a architecture. So the name is not talking about one incident, it's talking about your whole āchāra, your conduct. And in this word, du also means difficult or stubborn, hard. So she who pacifies even the conduct that refuses to change, the hardened ones, she will pacify it. So not just one small habit, we're talking about the hardened ones. Like you tried you tried to fix it 10 times but didn't go. We're talking about those kind of habits. Shamini, Sahasranam does not say she destroys the wrong conduct. It doesn't say she punishes. The word is shamana. Shamana means calm, settle, cool. If you look at Ayurveda, there are two ways of approaching a disease or ailment. Okay, a treatment processes. There are two ways. So one is shodhana, which is purification. It's forcing you to flush out all the toxins from your body. So that is the one way of doing it. The second way is called shamana. Shamana is pacification, calming the disturbance, right? And they will balance it. So that is the approach in Ayurveda. Right, so here they are using that same word, which is shamini. Okay, means cooling down. So if you look at it, Devi, she is the one who killed Bandasura, and she has power, right, even to kind of destroy your durācāra, your habits. But she doesn't use force. Instead of that, she's actually calming you down. So it's like this. If you look at say muddy water, a lot of mud water, what happens if you keep stirring it? The mud rises everywhere, right? The water turns brown. But how will you make it clear again? Not by fighting, you just leave it like that. Let it settle down. If you stop stirring, slowly without you doing anything, it will come down. So our mind is like that. If you can go deeper and deeper, it will settle. So that process is shamana, and that is her method. Right? You will get that clarity. The clarity was always there, but because of this mud, you're not able to see it clearly. It was under the disturbance the whole time. So that is shamini. So normally what we do is our approach is we stir our emotions or we feed more negativity into it. That is how our brain works. But she brings more stillness to it, clarity to it. Dosha means defect, fault or distortion. Varjita means free from. She who is free from every defect. Now, Varjita comes from this word varj, means to exclude, leave out, strip away. The name doesn't say that she overcame her defects. It says that defect was never included. Okay, so there was no dosha. Dosha is again from Ayurveda, the medical word dosha. You must have heard of vada, pitta, kapha. These are dosha. These are imbalance in our body. So she is out of that imbalance. Doshavarjita. There is nothing in her that is out of balance. Nothing can swing, nothing can be disturbed. The last name was Shamana, that is again from Ayurveda, calming. This name is Dosha, that is also from Ayurveda, imbalance. So, in our traditional interpretation, dosha is far from physical imperfection. Like especially Patanjali, he talks about 5 imperfections which causes imbalance in us. So those are avidya is one, ignorance, asmita, that pride inside you, raga, dvesha, and the last one is abhinivesha. These are like stains inside us, and we all experience this. So what happens is when we meditate on her, on this nama, she will help us to understand these doshas. First is awareness, and then she will help us to overcome these doshas. Because she is Doshavarjita, she is free from imbalance. So she will also remove imbalance from us. Okay, let's move to the next nama, which is Sarvajna. Sarvajna means she knows everything. In Sanskrit, there are a lot of words for wisdom, information, learning, study, and things like that. But jnana is a very powerful word. Jnana means direct knowing. No gap between the knower and the known. Like think about it, like how do we learn? We look things, we stand here and there is an outside thing and we try to gather information about it, right? And we create a picture inside our head, and that's the way we learn anything. Anything we learn, that is the process. And there is always a delay between you and the learning. But Sarvajna is like, she knows everything. There's no delay, there's not even a gap. So that is Sarvajna. She knows everything. So what does it mean? She knows everything about everything. That means she knows everything about you as well. Just think about it. If somebody knows everything about you, how does it feel? It is nice, but at the same time, it's a little scary, right? If somebody knows everything about you, because as a human being, like imagine a spouse or a friend, who knows everything about you. A lot of emotions come out of it, right? Sometimes they can actually play with it. But here, Devi doesn't have any agenda. She knows everything, and she knows why you behave the way you behave. She knows all your doshas, because the previous name is Doshavarjita. She knows all your imbalance and things like that. And she will address the problem from the root because she knows what causes the problem. You get what I'm saying? So you have any defect or dosha and things like that. She's Sarvajna. She knows everything. She knows why you behaved in the way you behaved. Okay? She knows the pattern so that she can actually fix it. That is Sarvajna. So in our tradition, all knowing is not something Devi has and you don't. So Sarvajna is a state of knowing. Okay? That is our natural, state. When we have that power, but it is covered or wrapped in layer and layer after, a lot of layers here. So Adi Shankaracharya is called Sarvajñan. So after meditating on the Divine Mother, he became Sarvajñan. He went to the Sarvajna Peedam in Kashmir. He ascended, the seat of the all-knowing, when he was just barely 30 years of age. So this is how it works. You are a knowing being, but there's a thick blanket. So you have to remove that covering. So whenever you chant Lalitha Sahasranamam, whenever you pray, whenever you connect with her, she is removing those layers. She's not adding anything to you. She's uncovering what was always there. So that is Sarvajna. So that knowledge is there inside us. Sandra is infinite compassion. Infinite. Okay, there are billions of people, but her compassion is infinite and undiluted. So, everybody is receiving, billions of people, everybody is receiving her compassion because it is that dense. So after Sarvajna, immediately it is Sāndrakaruṇā. First, she knows everything about you, and because she knows everything about you, She is compassionate. The two concentrated compassion. Okay, so that's the order. And this compassion is very important, because an intelligence which sees everything, which knows everything about you, if she is not compassionate, then there's a problem, right? That's why the order is very good. She knows everything and she is very compassionate. So the I that sees everything is connected to the heart of this immeasurable compassion. So because the more we learn about a person, their attitude, their selfishness, and generally, the more you know about somebody, sometimes the love comes down. Correct? And that's why compassion is very important. So she knows the worst thing you have done, worst thing about you, but her compassion is very strong. Okay, and even Dhyana Shloka, we talk about it, right? Karuna Tarankita Akshim. That is the Divine Mother. Karuna Rasa, ocean of compassion. And here it's talking about Santra, like a forest, thick. So you may have a question, if Devi is so compassionate, why does she not remove every difficulty you face, right? That's also a logical question. But the beauty is, like any parent, any loving parent, they want the kid to, learn and grow. And, sometimes, like, imagine if teachers, out of compassion, remove all the examination. That's not the way it works, right? So sometimes grace may remove the intensity of the problem, but you may have to face it, because that's the way we learn. That's how we become strong. Okay, so that is her compassion. So let's move to the last nama of this verse, Samanādhika Varjita. Samana means equal, Adhika, greater or superior. Varjita means without. She has neither an equal or a superior. That is Samanādhika Varjita. So on a devotional level, it's very simple. Nobody equals her, nobody exceeds her. But look at the word, okay? Samana and Adhika. It's like very poetic, because generally we talk about hierarchy, right? Anything which exists here, there is something equal, something above it, right? Those are the two possibilities. But this name removes both. It doesn't say that she is the greatest, because even if you put she is the greatest, there is a ranking. Okay, so they remove both, the greatest and the top. It removes that thing. And this is what it means for us. If she has no superior, then nobody can overrule her. Think about it. When she forgives you, there is no higher court that will reverse it. No Supreme Court or anybody like that. No one can review her decision and send it back. So her mercy, whatever she's going to give, it's final. That is, the supremacy. Okay. So that is why there is nobody equal to her, nobody superior to her. If you look at our Brahman, that's how they describe in Upanishad. None is seen equal to that, nor greater than that. So the same thing they're talking here, Samanādhika. So look at the sequence. Sarvajna, all-knowing. Sāndrakaruṇā, concentrated compassion. Samanādhika Varjita, no equal, no superior. And the next name is Sarvashaktimayi. We'll talk in the next class, next week. So this is like full power. So knowledge, compassion, supremacy and power. That is the order. So let's recap verse 51.
Duṣṭadūrā Durācāraśamanī Doshavarjitā Sarvajñā Sāndrakaruṇā Samānādhika
Duṣṭadūrā says she stays away from darkness. Durācāraśamanī means even if there is darkness, I can transform you. Doshavarjitā says true transformation never needs any hatred. Sarvajna says the mother understands everything, your entire story. Sāndrakaruṇā, complete understanding, complete compassion. Samanādhika Varjita, nobody above her. She is the supreme. So that's the message of verse 51. May Devi be with you always. Om Sri Matre Namaha.